Hey guys, today's story is about D&D and alcohol not mixing well together. So, early this summer, I started a new 5e group, and everyone knew each other and had played before, so I figured, what could possibly go wrong? But that was naive of me. The table consisted of the DM, the warlock, two friends of ours, which were the bard and the monk, my boyfriend, and then myself. And almost as soon as we began the campaign, we had to stop because of some work and school requirements from both the monk and I. But a few weeks ago we were able to pick it back up, and I deeply regret that we actually did so. Everyone had been away from their characters for about 2 months, so there was the as-expected relearning curve. However, one thing that I had underestimated was how disruptive being in person again would be. We had played remotely the first time, but since we could meet in person, I thought we would do that instead. And the problems began when we revealed our snacks and booze. My boyfriend and I were hosting, and we had ordered a few pizzas and gotten a small bottle of liquor for some shots. Our friend, the bard, had decided to be charitable and bought a larger case of White Claws for the whole table to enjoy, along with some bags of chips. The monk arrived with nothing but a mid-sized bottle of hard liquor, significantly harder than anything anyone else had brought. So we were a little concerned, but we thought that it wouldn't be a big deal. The monk immediately grabbed a White Claw, poured it into a glass, and then poured a few shots of her very hard liquor into it. Now, we were all trying to be polite and not call her an alcoholic, but the rest of us all glanced around the table at each other, and she didn't seem to notice us sharing that moment. Eventually, the game started, and we were trying to have a good time. They had to return the item that they were hired to retrieve by the quest giver, which should have been super easy, about half an hour or so, but it took them nearly 2 hours to get from entering the town to talking to the quest giver. They didn't even make any stops. The monk just kept derailing the conversation. Now, it had been a few months, so I was ready for some goofing and joking around, but she would just not get back onto track. She would constantly bring up memes on her phone and seem to text to other people. I gave her an initial warning after her first off-topic meme, and she quieted down for a bit. I figured that we had all been lonely for a while because of quarantine, and we all just needed to get it out of our systems. And once they arrived at the quest giver, the first actually in-character stuff started up. And due to some complications that had arisen during the mission, they wouldn't be able to be paid the full amount. The quest giver simply didn't have the funds available. The warlock and the bard said okay, and they knew that they had done the right thing. And the quest giver promised future work, so they were fine with it. The monk, however, was livid and started pitching a fit. And I had a hard time telling whether or not this was supposed to be in character. Her character then drew her weapon and demanded more money while she, at the table, was rising to her feet, yelling at me. I should have just called it there, but in the name of getting her to calm down so that the neighbors didn't call a noise complaint, I just placated her and gave her something else. And I don't even remember what. I called for a break, as I had to use the restroom, and I wanted another slice of pizza. We have one bathroom, so we had to take it in turns, and the whole time that we were on break, the monk just would not shut up. She was probably very drunk by this point, but we could just not get her to stop. And while she was in the bathroom, I talked to the warlock and the bard. They were a little frazzled, but they still wanted to continue on. So the three of us agreed to just not indulge her craziness and soldier on. That, however, was a mistake, as by the time that she got back, she was very drunk, and she started pouring herself another massively alcoholic mixed drink. I don't think she ever really got back to the game. I managed to get the warlock and the bard to a decent enough stopping point, which took about an hour, but it would have taken 10 minutes if the monk just hadn't been so loud and constantly interrupting. I kept cutting her off and texting the other 2 players, but they really wanted to continue playing, so I said okay. Okay, So I can fully agree with placating a individual who is getting very rowdy at a table in the short term, but if you have a very aggressive drunk person, you should probably call the game then and there, after they've calmed down, because otherwise if you continue, then you're just going to be getting more of the same, especially if the person is as bad of an alcoholic as this person seems to be. And another thing, you should probably call an Uber or a taxi. The monk didn't know the bard super well, out of character, and started to talk to her. She asked if she would be okay if she made some physical contact with her. We're all used to the monk being a little touchy-feely when she's drunk, so we're okay with it. She then proceeded to snap the bard's bra strap and started to make some really rather unwelcome sexual advances, which were immediately rebuffed. I think that this was the only time that the monk actually ever slowed down or thought about how her actions were affecting others. The game came to an abrupt halt when she started to lay the groundwork for making similar advances on my boyfriend and I. So I stood up and said that that was the end of the session, and it was time for everyone to go home. The monk said that she would finish her drink and then go home. My boyfriend and I have individually been on the receiving end of some unsavory sexual stuff, so I was unwilling to allow that to continue. And when it happened, he stood up and left the table. He wasn't just going to sit there. A few minutes passed, and I could tell that the monk was deliberately not finishing her drink to prolong her stay. It's rude to tell people point blank to leave, after all. Yes, it is rude, usually, but considering what this person has done at this point, they have waived any respect or politeness that they would have been given by you. Kick them out. And this whole time, she's talking at the bard, trying to speedrun becoming friends. I ask her if I could help her pack her things up. It's the polite way of telling someone that they're overstaying their welcome. She says no thanks, and immediately goes back to talking the bard's ear off. Another minute passes while I check on my boyfriend to make sure that he's doing okay. And then I come back, and she's still talking. No progress on the drink. Kick her ass out. I can tell that she's taking advantage of our kindness and politeness. So I tell her that it's time to pack her things, and that I'll take her home, now. She then tries to give a long goodbye to everyone, and I'm forced to physically put my hands on her shoulders and say, "No. It is time for you to go. Get in the car." As I drove her home, I don't actually think that she understood just how pissed off I was. I think that just made me more angry, as the warlock, the bard, and I were really looking forward to playing our D&D game. They were super invested in their characters, and I had a lot of stuff planned. And she disrespected everyone's time by being obnoxious and refusing to pay attention. She disrespected everyone by getting stupid drunk at the table, and then she sexually harassed the bard, who is her acquaintance at best. And then she wanted to do it to myself and my boyfriend, despite knowing that we are both very sensitive to that stuff. Yeah, no, goodbye. The next morning, I told her that the game was done, and we wouldn't be meeting anymore. I told her that the rest of the table was rather uncomfortable with her behavior, and we wouldn't be returning to that game. The warlock, the bard, and I had a really long talk a couple of days ago, and we think that we'll actually continue on without the monk, as scheduling allows. I didn't want to force them back into an uncomfortable position, but I'm glad that they were at least willing to give this campaign another shot. And after it all, I'm still just flabbergasted at just how rude, inconsiderate, and gross that the monk got. We've been friends for years, and she's never acted anything like that around me. I just hope that we can all put this problem player behind us. Well, I was going to say, before I got to the last paragraph there, everyone else enjoyed it, get rid of the problem player and play with everyone else, maybe find a replacement player, but yeah. That was already said, so I guess I'm just saying things that don't need to be said. But I do think that this story is a very good example of why you should be careful who you have drinking at your D&D table. There's a lot of people who do not handle their alcohol well, and more to the point, you need to learn and know when you need to put your foot down and say, enough is enough. And with that being said, you shouldn't be afraid of being rude to someone who's already been very rude and inconsiderate to begin with. But in any case, that's the end of this one. So, as always, stay safe, stay sane, and have a good one.